Okay, I want to thank Carl for the previous lecture, because I think what I'm going to tell is going to build a bit further on it. And I have chosen for more like to share a personal journey I made myself in unlearning, and the things I learned and that are very important to me today, and which are also the motivation for me to support this Buckminster College, because I think that the openness to change the mindset is very important for this initiative to come to a success and to maybe change the world a bit, of the world of education at least, to have an impact. So well, let's see how, yeah. So it's my struggle with obsolete mindsets and what mindset could be useful. How do we make sense of our being in the world? A personal journey with a few suggestions. And it is the question I ask myself all the time: how to relate to life and to the world that surrounds us, and how to live an intelligent life. How do you do that? And when you regard a mind as a result of immersion of the culture in which you grew up, my mind was most of the time very confused. And as a result, I think, of a dominant and reductionistic mindset, not only at school, but also as a daughter of a professor in mathematics who was very, there was only one truth, and that was the truth. So I had to struggle a lot with the mindset about life, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So the rationalism and empirism was the dominant mindset for me in my environment, and it was very mental, and it felt a bit cold and far away, but also created an overview and was clear and neat. So it was also a nice playground for my head, and it gave the illusion I could understand and control the world around me. As far as it concerned not myself and nor other living beings that constantly impacted my reality. So I as a young child, I already experienced a missing link, and it was a lack of this personal involvement, and that it didn't resonate with my sense of deep interconnectedness, my intuition, as Carl says. So what with the experienced complexity, the beauty, the layerness of reality I lived in, and how to deal with it. So due to that, I caused a huge lack of energy. I tried to relate to these seemingly conflicting resonances, and I tried to make sense out of it, but it wasn't always with big success. So I missed not only what Lotte explained last time as the basic needs for people to grow, as being exploring love and purpose, but I also missed room for beauty and the recognition of the ungraspable multidimensionality of living, which I could experience when I was reading or listening to music or walking or playing in nature. So there were lots of things that weren't adapted to each other. So for me, it was very confusing reality. So, and I ended up being depressed. So what were the mental models to guide me out of what I call my empty void and into a creative void, a room where I could make sense and experience joy? That's the question I asked myself for today. So when I was studying at my 18th, I started to study philosophy, and I met two thinkers that were very important to me because they really opened up my world. And the two were Jacques Lacan and Jacques Derrida. And by talking about the structure of desire and the importance and impotence of language in narrowing the gap between the subject and the object, they really opened up a world for me. So language was not just noting something outside there. Language was also ambiguous. So, and it was okay. So it was the first time I sensed that it was okay to feel that language was very ambiguous. So that was really an eye-opener. And there was also existential phenomenology, who claimed that our body is our being in the world, not our head. We are situated living beings. The mind is inseparable from our bodily situated nature. For me, as someone who was almost always thinking and ignoring what was happening in my body, this also was like, oh, what are they? What do they mean? I really struggled with it, but I sensed, my intuition told me this was very, very important. So the body as environmental information. And now when I'm working as a coach and a psychotherapist, the basic axioma of my work. So, and later on, I also got to know the Gestalt psychology, where the sensory organization is not carried out by the self or mental processes within, but is inherent in the act of perception itself. So the qualities, it means that we don't perceive isolated things, we perceive relations. So it's all foreground and background. It's an interaction. So it's very important to me. And a few years ago, I learned to know Veerle, an Italian philosopher, who talked about quasi things. And he says that emotions are not, their locus is not, they don't go inside within the affective layer of our inner life, but they are more close to our being among other beings. So in other words, this means that emotions for him is a quasi thing, which is endowed with influential expressive qualities, and he calls it an atmosphere. Emotions as atmosphere, as a quality of the interactive field, and as such they are not at all subjective. So that I'm still struggling with this, but I think it's very important to adjust my mind view, but I'm still struggling with it. So there were two major shifts, I could say. And the first one is that we are not isolated things as human beings, and we are not merely the observer of the outside world. There is an interacting field at work, and this interacting field is our first reality. It's only afterwards that we start to dissociate between the subject and the object and everything that is part of this more rational way of thinking. So there is an interacting field, and the self is like the contact border between me as organizing principle in this world, and I'm constantly impacted by this world. That's the first shift in mindset. And the second is that it's not that we create this reality we are living in, we create this together. So the need, my need and the need of the situation organizes the field we live in. So needs and experiences are created between an organism and their field. So people are always actively organizing their fields in relation to their current needs, and that will be influenced, of course, by their past experience also. So self-awareness is not an internal state, but is a situational event. It is a self as process awareness. So we are work in progress. We constantly, we are moving, we are interrelating constantly. So behavior will be influenced by past and anticipated future, but it will be the present dynamic of the current situation that the figural need surfaces that will organize the field. A field that also is able to respond to our way we organize. So this interaction is very important in the way that we constantly create our own interactional field. So, and the awareness we have about this is the body sense of the situation. It is an implicit apprehension of my situation. And it is a form of feeling and thinking. So in being aware, that is the way the situation talks to me. That's the way the field makes itself known to me. So our awareness of the situation implies and also generates our next move. It's very, I was astonished when I realized that the full dimension of what this meant. So it took me years to understand this, and I'm still, it's still not always very clear to me, but the result of this new mindset, of embracing this new mindset, was a movement of being driven back, which I see in lots of young people. I experience a lot of people. So a movement of being driven back inside and having trouble with this complexity and beauty of this experienced reality, to starting gradually to enjoy this complexity as a source of a life and energy that can be very creative when it is well supported. So how can we support consciousness to be more attuned to this complexity and this beauty, both in the inner and the outer world, in the interactional field, as I was talking about? What worldview could support our youngsters to develop themselves and the world to fully and freely exchange? And in this interacting field, they are living and creating themselves together with everything that surrounds them. So that's, for me, that's a major question. And maybe I first want to tell you something before we go into the scheme, that this mindset, I as a coach, I always have to be very, I can't be too academic. That's not what people like when you work with groups and organizations. So I developed a kind of metaphor, and I want to share this with you. But it is a result of a dialectic exploration. So it is my way of trying to enrich the palette of life and its possibilities. And I know it is a bit, how do you say, kort door de bocht, a bit simple, put in a simple way, but I believe it really makes sense, and it can be a guide in the way how we process us as being tutors in a way, and as being more like midwives for those young peoples to give birth to their potential and to explore the beauty and the richness of the world. So it is I will share it just like it is. So let's see, with all the things that are maybe not very elaborated, but it is a bit like there is in one way you can say there is a dominance of the head, the rationality, and on the other hand, there are those things that are a bit ignored in the rational mindset, and that has almost very often it has to do with the matters of the heart. So when we try to overcome this and to put this together in a new mindset without losing the importance of rationality and of the matters of the heart and the matters of the head, I want to suggest that we can work in a very holistic way, and where our spectrum is not just objectivity or the subjective world, but where we have room for wholeness, and also that our senses are, yeah, also our inner reality is not just there, but is also taken seriously, and we can lean upon this multi-sensorial way of perception, and so it has to do with um, developing more embodied thinking, and the result of it, and I can witness this, and I feel it myself. The result is not only being sharp and witty, what happens when you are in a very rational state of mind, or being affected when you're in an emotional state of mind. It is really the combination of the two, as 1 and 1 is 3 in this combination, because you feel moved, you have a purpose, it is bigger than yourself. So it is what we could call you give in to the open game, or and the longing is not just control or surrender, but it has to do with attunement between this, what the situational needs are, and what you can offer to the situational needs. So the intention is to connect in wholeness. So this is a metaphor I would like to explore more, and I think it can be very important for us to have this point of perspective to evaluate things, and um, to check out, are we holistic, are we honoring multisensoriality, are we really embodied in our thinking, is it about being moved and attunement and connection instead of judgment, or mere sensing and being reactive. So the exploration of this part of what I call hard thinking seems very important for me. It's not merely about finding the truth, but it's about becoming whole, and not only as a person, but as the whole field. So when we are attuned and connected and moved by our environment, this becoming whole can be a process of the larger system we are part of. So it is about co-creating a way that involves all the elements and creates a whole that makes sense to all the stakeholders, including the future. And one of the very inspiring persons I am very glad I know in my life, he was a mentor to me and still is Malcolm Parlett. He is a very famous Gestalt therapist, so famous in the world of the Gestalt therapists, but I suppose you don't know him, but he wrote a book, and I can't show it because it is only in an ebook version. So, but he wrote it, and it's called Future Sense, and he calls it the way of thinking and being in the world, as a bit in the way that I described. He calls it whole intelligence, and it is a possible answer to the increasing complexity of our interacting fields, and how to support creativity above also the destructive distribution of energy. Because if we don't handle this with care, all development that isn't guided is a cancer, is a perfect example of a not well guided form of development. So we need to take care of it. So, and he talks about 5 availabilities that humanity can develop, and we can support in our project of the Buckminster College this development. And it is about things that we can learn, and when we combine them, the more we learn to use these availabilities, the more we create an answer to the situation that has the quality of whole intelligence. And he's talking about the availabilities are we really responding to the situation, meaning that we need to ask ourselves, um, can we read the situation as it is? Are we able to read the situation, or are we just able to read our own point of view and our own need that is emerging from the situation? Are we taking into account all the different elements that are creating the situation? That's a very hard thing to develop, being sensitive to the situation and not only to what you need in this situation. So it is a perspective that is like from a bird. So you include yourself in the whole. The other availability is, are we able to really interrelate? This means that, are we respecting ourselves and the others in their otherness, in their diversity? Are we taking all these elements that I feel and the others feel, are we taking this serious and are we relating to it? Are we able to manage our potential destructivity? Are we able to see our projections? Are we able to see how we are reactive in our way we deal with each other? And are we willing to investigate in our fear when something strange is walking towards us, or someone who is strange to us and awakes all projections? Are we able to to deal with it in a sensible way, and to search for the wisdom that is hidden in all these dynamics? So he says you can only do this when you also experience yourself as an embodied subject. So you need this embodiment to have this, to read the situation and to be aware about what this interrelatedness means and what it asks from you. And the other availability is for him very important, and Karel also talked about it, I guess. Are we able to look back and see possibilities and reflect on our actions, take responsibility also, and are we able to reflect on our own proper lives to see that the way we deal with things has to do with who we are, that there is an interconnectedness? Can we reflect upon that so that we can see that it is not that relative, but it's different for you than for me? So, and are we able to deal with these differences? And the last availability he is talking about is the ability to experiment and to he explains it a bit like you have your comfort zone and you have those things that are that you already know, and are you willing to lean on this as a ground, and then to experiment and to go for new things with this security of the things you know? And are you willing to leave this comfort zone and stay at the same time a bit in contact with it, so you can really start to experiment, not experiencing too much fear, so you can go and search for new dimensions, and you can open yourself. It has to do with safety, also with vulnerability, and with your ability to contain yourself in certain situations. So these are lots of, it's not real competences, but important abilities we can support in ourselves and in the way we can live this together with our students, with our youngsters. So yeah. So I think these availabilities we can develop them to support more whole intelligence and to emerge and to transcend our personal needs in favor of what the situational needs are. So with every solution or every thinking process, maybe we can ask ourselves these availabilities turning into questions and ask ourselves, are we responding to a situation? Are we really interrelating? Are we taking into account our embodied state of being? Are we reflecting, and are we open for experiments? So I think educating should be about developing these 5 availabilities and to free the mind by adopting what I call this hard thinking and this more bigger perspective to develop.